friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to what seems to be the final episode of Undertaker: The Last Ride. Larson, it definitely seems like this episode was meant to signal the retirement of The Undertaker, even though he didn't quite use that word.
He didn't use the word, I believe, in the end. I don't believe he ever said the actual phrase, I'm retiring. Consider this my retirement. I'll read the full quote here. So this is coming off the boneyard match. He says, if there was ever a perfect ending to a career, that right there was it. If Vince was in a pinch, would I come back? I guess time would only tell there. In case of emergency, break glass, you pull out the Undertaker. I would consider it. At this point in my career, I have no desire to get back in the ring. So, it seems to be he's trying to indicate seemingly that he is content to not wrestle again, but he doesn't go as far as to say, I am officially retiring.
Yeah, so he seems, and even at Extreme Rules, like we saw this in the last episode.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way, his final statement seems to be a lot less about the perfect moment than we would than I was sort of led to think.
It's kind of the story, the arc of the overall series is that he starts out wanting to go out at an absolute high mark, where it's not only that he's content and happy with the bout, he's happy with the bout, and he wants people to think that he has plenty left in the tank so he doesn't have to retire. Of course, that's kind of a catch-22. He has a bad match. He feels like he needs to redeem himself for that match. He has a good match. Well, I got a couple more in the tank. Why not do another one? And it's this repeating cycle we see throughout the show, and it seems eventually by the end he's come to grips with the idea that I don't know if he necessarily comes to the realization that this cycle is happening within him, but he seems to have dropped somewhat the idea that he needs to go out on this seemingly perfect moment,
like the iconic him versus Shawn Michaels, him versus Roman Reigns. There are a lot of interesting things about this. One of them is he does seem to, the documentary itself seems to have played a role in his self-reflection and what constitutes the perfect end. And I wonder if the documentary itself, when he's talking about that, then it becomes, hey, the Extreme Rules match where he teams up with Roman and he views it as this was a really good match. It redeemed whatever it was supposed to redeem. Because the Extreme Rules match came on the heels of Mania 33, right? No,
it was after Goldberg. The Goldberg match.
Yeah, sorry. It was after the Goldberg match. And he was like, okay, that's it. I'm good. That worked. And it wasn't like the perfect one-on-one torch passing thing. And they talk about torch passing a lot in this episode. Randy Orton brings it up. Bray Wyatt brings it up. A lot of people bring it up that he was always about passing the torch, getting the other guy over, making Jeff Hardy look good. Randy Orton's first televised match looked good, all that stuff. Or not first televised match, first match against The Undertaker.
Yeah. He was, and there's something he said at the end here, and the transcripts for these quotes from the episode are from Fightful. He said this as well. My peers, given their insight, I got a genuine sense they care for me and want the best for me. It's been very humble to allow this part to come out and have them accept it. They've accepted Mark Calloway. I can do more good outside the ring than I can inside. I'm finally at a place where I can accept that, because before he went on the bit about how he's content to be done, there is a pretty extended piece where he's preparing for his match against AJ, which is supposed to be a wrestling match prior to the pandemic, and them doing the boneyard match instead, where he's in the Performance Center not only to kind of figure out if he's in a good enough shape to have the match itself, but also to impart some of his knowledge to the talents at the Performance Center. And he makes the point of saying every time he goes through Orlando, he stops there to talk to the talent there and work with them in the ring. They were doing a video session in one of the conference rooms, it looked like. So he seems at this point to realize, as he says it himself, I could do more good outside the ring in terms of helping to nurture and develop new talent than I could in the ring, trying to still wrestle at a high level.
One of the MVPs of this entire series has been Triple H. Every time that dude opens his mouth, he's got some other wise nugget of wisdom. And when he said, it's a lot, I mean, I'm totally paraphrasing here. It's a lot easier to retire, basically, to call it quits when you do so while transitioning on to a teaching role, to a role where you're amongst the youth, you're amongst the hungry, and you're able to impart your wisdom. And that back and forth seems to be something that especially Shawn Michaels has completely and totally embraced. I mean, we know Triple H has, but we see him from more of a business perspective because he's like part of the family, part of the company, trying to build the company. A guy like Shawn Michaels comes back to NXT and specifically NXT UK, and seemingly, his experience with Gargano, with probably Jordan. Did he have I forget if he was had a heavy hand with Jordan Devlin or not.
I think so.
But with any number of names, Ciampa, any number of names that Shawn Michaels has really been at. I mean, he wears Undisputed Era stuff every time you see him.
He always has an Undisputed Era hat on.
Yeah,
everywhere.
And for him, I could totally understand why. Being in that role and shaping the future. Look, everybody, they just want to be used. They want to be important, And if you can't do that for 15,000 people out there, and you can do it for those people, but through young talent, I imagine that's an incredibly satisfying thing.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, it seems like it is.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of wrestlers in this documentary who have talked about nothing replicates. We've heard it countless times. Nothing replicates the pop. When you go through the curtain, you walk down the stage, the roar of the crowd.
Austin talked about this.
Yeah. The adrenaline rush from that. Nothing can replicate that. But you got to find something that gives you that same kind of feeling if you want to move on. I think Shawn Michaels has mentioned this, that he's talked, all the incredible moments he had in his own career, the feeling of pride he has when he sees someone that he's mentored, like Gargano, maybe Adam Cole, have a moment, get that reaction. It seems that means just as much, if not more, to him than anything that he's been able to accomplish himself in his career. It's
an important thing. I mean, if you just think about it from a perspective of, you try your best to put your feet in the shoes of, just a person who's old and their time has come to retire. It's like, man, you either get the feeling that everything has passed you by and you're just in a really lonely place, or you surround yourself in an environment where people want to know what you know. They're coming to you and you can mold them, and then you can see it when they go out there. I imagine it's an incredibly intimate feeling knowing that this person's out there getting these pops, doing something that you have. I mean, it's very much akin to having children. It's like, you get geeked out when you teach your kids something and they adopt it and they succeed at it, I mean, from the beginning of when they're born, basically, it's like, oh, wow, they're learning to do this stuff. And I had a hand in that. It's a very satisfying thing. And I can imagine that that's the same type of feeling that you might be getting professionally doing that. And it was a really fun scene seeing him in there with the big men of NXT and when he's in the ring with them. But let's talk about this, man. Bottom line, is this dude retiring or what? Because the Boneyard match, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't the caveat of it was cool, but it wasn't in front of people. He was all in on the Boneyard. He loved it. He thought, he said, I'm a storyteller, and this told the story. And I think one aspect of it might be there might not have been fans there, but the physicality was there. Yeah. Triple H said these guys beat the hell out of each other. Yeah, and I think that aspect of it might have been more important than having the fans like, hey, physically, I did this.
Yeah, he said he felt like he'd wrestled a 45-minute match after shooting that. By watching this, if we've learned anything about Mark Calloway, is that he has a hard time stepping away, because I think he has a hard time telling Vince no.
Yeah, he does.
And if he feels at peace with walking away right now, that's one thing. But until he's ready to say no to Vince, if Vince is calling up to say, Mark, I need you, then the expectation is there that, he could, maybe a low probability, but he could step back in the ring. So if we get the indicate any sense that Vince has called him up and he just says, I'm honestly not interested, even if Vince says I need you, until that happens, the possibility exists that he'll come back.
Yeah, I agree with that. The thing is, if Vince needs me in a pinch, well, what do we know about Vince? Seemingly these days, he's always in a pinch because ratings are crap, and he doesn't know how to deal with this pandemic stuff, and he doesn't know how to build long-term stars, and so he relies on the past. Now, maybe these days the past means more like ruthless aggression era guys, and not guys like the Undertaker who debuted against Hulk Hogan.
Yes, in 1990. Well, no, yeah, in 1990.
Yeah, yeah. So,
that being said, I wouldn't be surprised. Whatever makes him happy, I guess, is what he should do. If he feels like, well, I need, say in, somehow in 3 months, there would be is running shows in front of fans again. They got Survivor Series. I think it's in Dallas this year. Maybe it's in Houston. It's in Texas. I know that. That'll mark his official 30th anniversary with WWE. And he seems, based on this and all the stuff, especially about Madison Square Garden, he appreciates the importance of moments.
Yeah.
And of history. And so if they came to him with a story, a program that he could be into, with an opponent that he thinks he could have a good match with, and I wouldn't be surprised if he said yes.
Yeah, me neither, because it's wrestling. And one thing about Undertaker is that he takes his character obviously very seriously.
Oh, we found out what the unholy trinity was for sure. 100%. It was Dead Man Undertaker, American Badass Undertaker, and Mark Calloway.
That's right. Yeah, he loved that. He loved that idea. It was a good idea. He doesn't take himself that seriously. He takes his business and his character extremely seriously. He's a goofy dude. And this, again, last episode really showcased that. Shooting the paper into the garbage and saying Kobe, which he had some thoughts on Kobe's death as well. But he's you see him goofing with the New Day. You see him goofing a lot, and he just seems like the chillest, silliest guy at times. And it's easy to see why that would make for such an effective locker room leader, because you need to, in that business, seemingly, you need to understand you got to be serious about your business, but, you also have to engage in this brotherhood, if you will, which, can be pretty silly. So, you can't take the business too seriously, I guess. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of guys in tights, play fighting. I do not mean that in a disrespectful way. But yeah. And so I think along those lines, if he felt good and the opportunity presented itself and Vince said, hey, we want a real big hurrah for our return, and we can do this last episode of The Last Ride where, we really go out. But that finale with the Travis Strait?
Oh, it was George Strait.
George Strait. I always get, what's the Travis? Who's Travis?
Travis Tritt.
Travis Tritt and George Strait.
Yeah.
I do not know my new country very well. Is that even considered?
George Strait was around. He's been around since the 80s, I think.
Yeah, well, that's what I consider new.
Oh, all right.
Anything from the 80s on. So anyways, yeah, that finale with him, and then the drone shot with him standing in a shack or whatever.
The montage and everybody's saying thank you, Undertaker. It was all edited and produced as if to say he is done.
It's done. Yeah. And you got to wonder how much of that, does Vince care? Would Vince care that they did that? He oversaw this entire production. You don't think that a nice bow like that wouldn't be a good?
No. If Vince is in a pinch and he thinks getting Undertaker on the card will put more eyeballs in front of his product, he will make that phone call.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much. I thought the boneyard stuff was really fascinating. I thought Undertaker's thoughts on what constituted a proper end was so fascinating. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the episode.
Yeah.
So we're both in agreement.
Conversation.
If there's fans of Survivor Series, he's back, isn't he?
I wouldn't say with 100% certainty, but I'd say there's a pretty decent chance.
Yeah, probably him and
if
AJ.
they have something good for him. I think at this point it's going to take something really good for him to consider it.
You think just a
really
straight up
good
match in front of fans against AJ ain't going to cut it?
Well, it might if he thinks he's in good enough shape to have a good match with AJ. Yeah, I think he would consider that.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, no, it's been a really, really good series. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. It's been interesting. I really actually feel like I got to know the guy, and I think that's
quite a bit actually.
That was the idea of the series. It really was.
Yeah,
seeing him play with his kid is the most adorable thing. It really is. Like, he's obviously way older than us and playing with the kid, but sometimes with Alabama, I feel like I'm that old playing with her. I'm like, man, like if I was doing this when I was like 22. Or 32 even, as opposed to 42 or 41, whatever I am, be a little bit different. But I couldn't imagine doing it at whatever, 56
55.
or whatever it is.
Yeah, 55, 56, however old it is, yeah.
So anyways, that's it for our last ride review. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.